Welcome to the stories that shape our community. My name is Trevor Moore, and I'll be your host in this Southeast Alberta podcast series where we explore the importance of putting local first and the power positive impact has on shaping our communities. These episodes are about giving listeners a backstage pass as we explore the why behind these great local business stories. There's no one-size-fits-all approach in business, and these journeys are as unique as the people themselves. Our local guests will highlight the challenges, solutions, and philosophies they've employed to overcome adversity, showcase resilience, and have a positive and lasting impact in our community now and well into the future. This week, I am so excited to share the story of Super T Aviation here in Medicine Hat. We have Terri Super with us, and we will talk a little bit about the aviation world, the aviation industry, some of the adversity, the challenges, and the community that comes together with it. Much like flying an aircraft, there are some similarities to business and flight. We're going to boil those down with an analogy. You know we've always got an analogy on the script. Let's get to it. Welcome to the show, Terri. Terri, welcome to the show today. So exciting to talk to you. And I know in your title you talk about, overseer of many things. I think one of the things that you need to add to that title today is official storyteller for Super T Aviation. Welcome to the show. Thanks for having us today and making some time.
I'm happy to be here.
We could talk a lot of things, but we're not going to go into aviation. I mean, maybe an analogy or two as we go on, but at the end of the day, we're talking business. If you're not in the aviation industry, if you're not a client or a customer or a user of Super T Aviation, most people drive by this building on the highway, they see it, and in their mind, it's like this little, and here's the air quotes, just this little aviation company in this lonely, quiet corner of Southeast Alberta, which when you dig further into the operation, it is far from little, it is far from small, it is far from lazy and quiet. Give us the lay of the landscape.
Okay, well, Super T started in 2008, and it was basically the child of BarXH Air, which was Les Little, my husband, started BarXH Air in the 60s sometime. This whole organization has been in business over 55 years. Wow. So Les started the BarXH Air, and they did flight training. That's where they started, and they went into charter. And I came on the scene about 1979 and became an instructor and a charter pilot with BarXH Air. And so we then BarXH Air had one of the first medevac contract with Alberta Healthcare, whatever it was called at that time. So we did lots of charter work. We did lots and lots of oil field charter, taking crews out of Medicine Hat to the north in the wintertime. And then lots of medevacs and the flight school. So that eventually grew in the 90s to include Alberta CityLink, which was a Tier 3 of Air Canada. And at that time, then we were doing scheduled work. So we were going all over Alberta, Lloydminster, Cold Lake, Calgary, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, all those kind of, and into the mountains with the jet streams. So we did that for 4 years until Canadian was bought out by Air Canada. And when the two merged, there was too much capacity. So that end of the part of the business was shut down. But we continued with the jet streams and did more charter work and the medevacs. We had the contract with the Alberta Health still, with 2 airplanes in Medicine Hat and an airplane in Calgary for that. And in about 2006, we were kind of thinking, well, maybe we should try and get out somewhere in that neighborhood. So we sold to some of Les's partners, 4 partners, and we lasted about. We went on a holiday for about a month and decided that really wasn't for us. And so we decided that in 2008 that we would start the flight school because the new owners of BarXH were going to shut down the flight school component of the business. So in my ultimate wisdom, I said, how much trouble can a little flight school be? And Les always says, be careful what you wish for.
Famous last words of any entrepreneur. I'll just take on this
Absolutely.
little project. Yeah.
Right. So in 2008, then we actually started the flight school again as Super T Aviation in the original hangar that Les had started Barks H Air in, which is a little Quonset over by the terminal. And since that time, then in 2010, we built this hangar, and it's this tall, not because of our little aircraft that we use for flight training, but because Les was also involved with an organization called Hawk Air that had Dash 8s, and this hangar would accommodate a Dash 8 that we were, they were trying to come up with a way of using the Dash 8 out of Medicine Hat. So anyway, we built this hangar in 2010 and built a condo hangar, a 5-bay, what we call a condo hangar behind us, and we kept the middle condo. Again, it was going to be, we could open the door and we could sit in the little balcony that we put into that condo hangar, and we could watch the airplanes go by in our retirement. Well, that now houses our 2 flight training devices, which are basically simulators. And we took over the fuel contract from Integra Air when they ceased operation, and then ended up with a 28-man accommodation out of Firebag in the north for student accommodation. So it's been kind of one of those that for a while there in the mid-2010s, our son, in his wisdom, thought we should look for international students. So Doug is a captain on the 787 WestJet, and at that time WestJet was not looking for, they had all the pilots they needed. There wasn't any shortage of pilots, and so we don't need to talk to flight schools about students. So we went to during that period of time, we were going back and forth to China 8 or 9 times trips to China to try and foster some relationships in China where we could get international students. We also went to the UK and to Ireland a number of times, 5 or 6 times to Ireland, again, trying to foster some relationships with schools in those countries. And when we'd go to these overseas places, the questions we would get asked are, okay, so do you have an ATO? And an ATO is an approved training organization, which is a worldwide accepted type of flight school with lots of regulation, lots of quality assurance to ensure. And
is that sort of the global overseeing umbrella of all the
absolutely.
Other
right.
national organizations,
right.
et cetera?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Most internationally, there aren't a lot of places like Canada and the United States that might have these small little flight schools. They all have huge flight schools, usually associated with an airline or with a big company like CAE that provides simulation, that sort of thing. But Canada didn't have that designation. So the closest thing that we had at that time in Canada was the integrated program. So I came home and I developed, with help, obviously, an integrated program. So now we are one of probably not more than, I don't think there's 24 schools in Canada that have an integrated program. So the other thing that we heard when we went overseas is what kind of student accommodation do you have? China would talk about, 300 students at once, where, we're like, oh gosh, no, we can't, there's no way we can accommodate that. But we did go and purchase this 28-man camp, executive camp out of Firebag. So there was student accommodation. And then they asked, okay, what kind of simulation do you have? And at that time we didn't have any. So since that time we've now purchased their French products. They're called AllSim. So we have 2, they're not full motion simulators like you see, that move they're big on big hydraulic jacks. These are fixed, so they don't move, but your mind really can't tell the difference.
Visually, you would not notice it. It's just missing the physiological symptoms that you get.
You can get motion sickness in the FTD if you're, prone to that thing. So now we have 2 of those over in the condo bay that was supposed to be our retirement project there. So it was kind of, if you know, they will come. If you have it, they will come.
Build it, they'll come.
Build it, they'll come, sort of thing. So the other things that, interesting things that have happened that I'm really happy and proud about, there's a couple of things. We had a small program at the college many years ago, an aviation diploma course at the college, and we reignited that relationship with the Medicine Hat College, and we now have their aviation management certificate, which works out really well. It's a certificate, so it's basically like if you were doing 5 classes a semester, it'd be 1 year. But this, you're mixing students in with this where they are trying to train at the same time. 5 being a full-time student, as if you've been down that route, you know it's a lot. So this works out really well because they stretch out the certificate program over 2 years, which is generally what it takes for a student to go from ab initio or nothing to a fully licensed commercial multi-engine IFR pilot. And they can do this aviation management program at the Medicine Hat College. It gives them, a leg up, when you go to interviews. You've got some post-secondary education. So we're really happy about that, really like the association that we have with the college. So we now have this big building here. We do also for storage rent, again, a building that Les had used years ago for storage. And when Integra ceased operation, we took back over the other building that Barks H was in, which is the hangar to the southwest of us here. And we put our maintenance department into that hangar, and that also houses Halo. Les was one of the original people that started the Halo operation. Obviously, we were providing the helicopter at that time, and we still do provide the Halo helicopter, the BK helicopter.
That's
that
the new
they
one?
operate. That's the new big blue one that they operate now. Luckily now, are very fortunate and we're very happy that the government has finally decided to
big
add
announcement.
some money. Yeah, so that's a big help to that organization because aviation is very, very expensive.
It's been great listening to this sort of timeline and evolution of Super T. But I want to look back at the business of Super T from its inception to today and the twists, turns, and changes of that. As a new entrepreneur, we always jump into entrepreneurship figuring we've figured the business model out. This is it. I'm going to make this profitable this way for the rest of my life. Most entrepreneurs I know, and as you're laughing, most entrepreneurs I know we feel like we got it figured out, but then we get in, we're like, I don't like that part so much. This part's more profitable. This is easier. This fits my personality. This fits our philosophy better. And the business plan ebbs and flows. It's more of a business scrapbook per se than a business plan. Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is that a new entrepreneur listening here really listens in and says, so what you're saying is I need to be a bit more pliable with my business plan? How important is it to be pliable as a business plan?
Well, I think you have to look to see how the industry is developing. Like you said, we went overseas looking for international students, and then in the next 5 years, it totally turned around, where we're not looking for international students anymore because the domestic market has skyrocketed. COVID put a pause on some of that because there wasn't any new hiring. But before that time, it was, and now again, it is extremely, you have to be very thinking ahead. I had 6 instructors last week. I now have 4 because 2 of them have moved on. And, I had in my back pocket, I've got 2 students that are going through an instructor rating. Okay, so they have commercial licenses and now they're working on the instructor rating. So it's always a matter of trying to think ahead. For instance, last fall, I thought we were going to get quite a few new students. And I did. And then the question came, are you vaxxed? Because as we all know, the aviation industry, you can't get on an airplane and fly right now unless you're vaxxed. And you can't become a commercial pilot unless you're vaxxed. I've had people that used to work for us that are now unemployed because they chose not to be vaxxed. So I lost about 5 or 6 students just in the first week or so of school, and so now I'm over capacity. So it goes back and forth, and you're talking about being flexible. This originally started off as BarXH Aviation. They went bankrupt in the 1980s and it became BarXH Air. So Les lost his partners, but it's again, once you get into aviation, it's a passion. We both have education degrees. We're both post-secondary graduates, and so it's not just that this is the only thing we could do.
You didn't end up in aviation.
No,
aviation ended up in you.
I have a music degree.
Yeah.
And flying and music are so closely related,
Yeah, for sure. Ironically, there's probably a twist somewhere in there that makes them parallel to one another somehow, right? It's interesting because we've talked about, the evolution of a business plan and having to be a little bit flexible and move and have your thumb on the pulse of things and those types of things. That necessitates having a network of people that you can lend an ear to or be an ear for. How important is it through those ebbs and flows and challenging times and name changes, operational changes, bankruptcies, all of these industry changes that have gone on? How important is it to have a network of people, not a network of clients, not a network of customers, but a network of people that can be sounding boards for you, either experiential mentors or coaches or teachers? How important is that as an entrepreneur that's listening right now to build your network so you have other people who can be your ears with you?
Well, I think it's real important. We're a member of ATAC, the Air Transport Association of Canada, and have been since basically we started Super T. And that's really important to have that contact. They're in touch with the stuff that's coming down from Transport Canada, that the new regulations, all the COVID regulations. We get kind of a heads up from ATAC of all these things kind of coming down the line, and they're the ones that actually helped us foster us to do the overseas. They organized, basically we're on a trade mission. What actually has happened with us is kind of we've become the mentors because Les and I and Doug have pretty extensive experience in the aviation business. And so we are actually mentoring, and that was one of the reasons we got into the flight school, was to mentor the students. There's not a lot of flight schools which have a charter operation attached to them. And we have gone down that path already. I was the director of operations for Alberta Cinelink. At that time, we had over 100 pilots, so fairly large organization. So I've been involved with working with transport in that regard. And so, which a lot of flight schools can't say that they have that sort of expertise behind them.
I want to hang on that for 1 second because there's two different parts to a person's life education. There's formal education, and then there's this experiential wisdom and education that you just can't find any other way. And when you find people who've gone through that experiential education, like you have gone, like you've done so many different things. You've now become the mentor in the industry. How does that feel to know that you're able to give back to the very industry that has given you so much?
Well, I mean, that's the primary reason we started this school, because we have had such a rewarding careers in aviation. From when I started and was instructing, I was working at BarXH Air. I did everything. I fueled the aircraft. I washed the floors. I cleaned the toilets. I answered the phone and worked my way up from the very bottom. Les, had an education degree, but had a strong background in an education degree, but had a strong background in aviation because his dad was a pilot in World War II. And it was just what you did. You loved what you were doing.
There's that old saying that you hear, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
And that sort of fits here, doesn't it? You're
Yes.
just truly passionate. Now, for those that are listening and new into entrepreneurship, I'm going to look right in the camera on this one. Loving what you do for a living does not mean it's always easy. It is all the same challenges as doing a job you don't love. It's just you love it on the good days.
Right.
There's parts of the job that you have to accept that are not your favorite. And as you get further into business, you can contract some of those out, hire to fill, do less of them. But as an entrepreneur starting out, you're going to do them all. How does Super T invest itself in the community? And I don't mean dollars and cents. I don't mean striking sponsorship checks and endorsement stuff like that. I'm talking like how you invest. And I know one way that you invest, and I want to hear the story. And this is the story of the Southern Alberta Flight Academy through Prairie Rose School Division. To me, that is a strong investment in the community. Take us through that. How do you get there? How does that program come out? How does it start? Okay. Where does the seed get planted?
My daughter-in-law, Sherry Little, was out golfing in a league with Regan Weeks, who is with Prairie Rose.
Yes.
She's now the superintendent. And it came up in conversation that, is there some interest in doing a high school program for high school students to get their private pilot license? And I mean, we kind of jumped on it and said, yeah, it's a great idea. There are others, there's mostly in the States, but there are other schools that do that sort of thing. And we'd be certainly open to, developing a program and seeing what we could do. So, there was quite a bit of work on her part and on our part to make sure that it fit into their curriculum and into some of their, like shop things and other programs that they can correlate and get credits for students. Obviously, that would be important. And so now we're in our third year. I just signed the latest pilot license yesterday. Logan Neubauer got his private pilot license signed yesterday. And there are 2 other students in the last year who are getting close to being through with the program and getting their license. The second year has, I think, 11 students. And then the third year, again, which I'm really happy about because it's all boys. Other than that, we have 3 young ladies, one of which is your daughter, Maya.
Yes.
In the program. And it's been just a wonderful experience. And to me, because I have an education degree, but I never really taught in the high schools. It's so interesting to me to see how these kids develop. The first year they're kind of just shy and don't say much. And, by the time they get into the second half of the second year, their personalities are starting to come out. I mean, some of those kids that I thought, oh my God, they shouldn't be in this program. They're just, they don't seem to be interested. And then they go solo and it's like the light bulb comes on and they're just so excited. And, now, I'll make some bookings and let's, I want to do some more. And then of course it gets to be a real community amongst themselves, right?
Yes.
Because they're this little group of student pilots.
They're a proud little bunch.
That's a pretty impressive thing to be a high school student. I mean, they could conceivably learn to fly before they have a driver's license.
I think the community aspect of that is so huge. Like it's more than just an aviation program in a school. Like they are their little tight-knit community. They ride the bus together. They talk the same talk. They walk the same walk. They have the same little interesting things. One of the things that I really like is they're building an airplane.
Yes.
Like it's not just like learn to fly. It's like you're literally going to be putting rivets into a shell and putting some aircraft together. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're lighting this fire for aviation. How many people do you think are in the air across our country, our world, our globe, that you've had a hand in putting in the sky?
There's actually, I can give you kind of a ballpark estimate for just pilots at WestJet.
Yeah.
It's over 130 pilots at WestJet.
So back to that original conversation.
Either worked for us or they came through here as students. So we've got probably a couple thousand that are out there in industry flying for the large major airlines all over the world. I get posts from a fellow who's in Abu Dhabi and they're all over.
I love it.
And we have, like I say, people everywhere, that have started out in this little community, learning to fly or working for this small little organization.
Yeah.
That have gone on to rewarding careers Let's put that in the back of our mind. Go forward from here. What do we have to do now? And that's basically this week. That's where we're at with the business this week.
Much like business, much like flying an aircraft, much like life in general. It's those 3 A's. When you run into challenges and adversity, it's you need to acknowledge the problem at hand, accept it to be the reality as it is, and then take action towards rectifying it or modifying it in the future.
Yeah.
And that goes for flying a plane, running a business, everything. I think that's a great place for us to step up. I've enjoyed the conversation. Again, thank you, Terri, so much for having us here today. It's been awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to our podcast sponsor, the Medicine Hat and District Chamber of Commerce, who is fueling the business community in Southeast Alberta. Through connections, support, and influence, they're driven to shape our community. Their hope is that this podcast will help fuel you and your passion for supporting local first. To learn more about the Medicine Hat District Chamber of Commerce or to watch more episodes of the stories that shape our community, please visit them online at medicinehatchamber.com/stories that shape our community. In addition, please follow us on your favorite podcast streaming app so you don't miss any of the unique stories we share, the inspiring guests who share them, and the impact they have had in Southeast Alberta. Stories are all around us. We just need to connect and be able to share them. If you want to be featured on this podcast with a story of your business or organization, or if you know a story that should be shared, please submit a nomination through the Chamber website. Thanks again for watching and listening today. We look forward to sharing more stories with you that help shape our community. I'm Trevor Moore, the host of Stories That Shape Our Community, and I challenge you all, be sure to help shape our community through your very own story.